Arrogance is a dangerous trait that can silently creep into a person's heart and distance them from Allah. In Islam, arrogance or kibr is not merely about feeling good about oneself or taking pride in one's achievements. It is a deep-seated sense of superiority that leads a person to look down on others and reject the truth when it contradicts their own desires. This is why arrogance is considered one of the most destructive spiritual diseases, one that prevents true growth and connection with Allah. The Quran and the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, repeatedly warn against arrogance, emphasizing that it is a barrier to guidance. Allah commands in the Quran not to walk upon the earth with pride, reminding us that humans are weak and dependent upon His mercy. In another verse, He describes the outcome of those who are arrogant: humiliation in this life and severe consequences in the hereafter. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, reinforced this message in a powerful hadith, stating that anyone with even an atom's weight of arrogance in their heart will not enter paradise. This warning alone should make us reflect deeply on our own attitudes and behaviors. Arrogance blinds a person from seeing the truth and makes them resistant to change. It fosters division within communities, creates unnecessary conflict, and distances a person from humility, the very characteristic that Allah loves. Even in daily interactions, arrogance manifests in how people speak, how they carry themselves, and how they treat those they consider beneath them. To purify the heart and draw closer to Allah, one must recognize the dangers of arrogance and actively strive to remove it. Only through humility can a person attain true success in this world and the next. Arrogance in Islam, known as kibr, is more than just a feeling of self-importance. It is a spiritual disease that corrupts the heart and prevents a person from recognizing their own limitations. Many people misunderstand the concept of arrogance, assuming that dressing well, owning nice possessions, or achieving success automatically makes a person arrogant. However, Islam does not condemn having good things in life. Rather, it warns against looking down on others or rejecting the truth out of pride. True arrogance manifests when a person considers themselves superior, disregards advice, or refuses to accept guidance due to their own ego. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, provided a clear definition of arrogance in a hadith, stating that it consists of rejecting the truth and belittling others. This means that an arrogant person is not only dismissive of correction but also sees themselves as above others, whether due to knowledge, wealth, status, or even religious practice. Arrogance can subtly creep into a person's behavior without them realizing it. A person may assume that their way is always right, refuse to acknowledge their mistakes, or even look down upon those they deem less knowledgeable or less fortunate. This attitude is dangerous because it blinds a person from seeing their own faults and creates a false sense of superiority that distances them from Allah's mercy. In the Quran, Allah warns against walking upon the earth with pride, reminding people that no matter how great they think they are, they will never be above His authority. The story of Iblis, Satan, serves as the ultimate example of how arrogance leads to downfall. When Allah commanded Iblis to bow to Adam, he refused, arguing that he was made of fire while Adam was made of clay. This arrogance led to his eternal rejection from Allah's mercy. Similarly, history has shown that arrogance destroys individuals and nations alike, as seen in the case of Pharaoh, whose pride led him to deny the truth until he met his end. To truly understand arrogance, one must examine their own heart and actions. It is not always loud and obvious. Sometimes it appears in the form of silent judgment, dismissing others' opinions, or feeling entitled to special treatment. Recognizing its presence is the first step in eliminating it, allowing humility and sincerity to take its place. Arrogance is a trait that carries serious consequences, both in this life and the hereafter. When a person allows arrogance to take root in their heart, it begins to shape their actions, their relationships, and their ability to grow spiritually. It creates a false sense of superiority, making one believe that they are better than others, more knowledgeable, or more deserving of respect. This mentality leads to the rejection of truth, even when it is evident, because an arrogant person struggles to admit their own shortcomings. It is this very attitude that led to the downfall of Iblis, who refused to obey Allah's command out of pride and was permanently cast out of his mercy. Spiritually, arrogance creates a barrier between a person and Allah. The Quran repeatedly warns against those who are arrogant, stating that their hearts are sealed from guidance. They become blind to wisdom, unwilling to accept correction, and dismissive of any advice that challenges their self-perceived greatness. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, warned that those who carry even the smallest amount of arrogance in their hearts will not enter paradise. This is because arrogance is the root of many sins. It leads to injustice, hypocrisy, and defiance of divine guidance. A person who is arrogant assumes they are self-sufficient, forgetting that all strength, knowledge, and success come only from Allah. On a social level, arrogance destroys relationships and creates divisions within communities. It leads to condescension, where a person treats others with disrespect, believing them to be inferior. This kind of behavior fuels resentment, damages trust, and weakens the bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood that Islam seeks to establish. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was the best example of humility, despite being the greatest of creation. He would sit, eat, and speak with the poor, showing that true honor comes not from status, but from character. When arrogance takes hold, it makes a person dismissive of others, unwilling to acknowledge their contributions, and quick to criticize rather than uplift. In the hereafter, the consequences of arrogance are severe. The Quran describes how the arrogant will be humiliated, their pride shattered, and their regret overwhelming. They will beg for another chance, but their arrogance in the worldly life will have sealed their fate. The example of Pharaoh is a clear warning. His arrogance led him to claim divinity, reject the truth, and ultimately face destruction. No matter how powerful a person may feel, arrogance will only lead to their downfall. The solution is humility, a trait beloved by Allah, which elevates a person both in this world and the next. Recognizing arrogance in oneself is not always easy, as it often disguises itself in subtle ways. A person may not openly boast or act superior, yet arrogance can still manifest in thoughts, attitudes, and interactions with others. The first sign of arrogance is the tendency to reject the truth when it contradicts personal beliefs or desires. A person may hear advice, receive correction, or be presented with clear evidence, yet pride prevents them from accepting it. Instead of humbling themselves and acknowledging their mistakes, they become defensive, dismissive, or even hostile. This resistance to truth is a serious spiritual danger because it blocks a person from growth and self-improvement. Another indication of arrogance is looking down on others, whether based on wealth, status, knowledge, or religious practice. It may appear as subtle judgment, an unwillingness to associate with certain people, or a habit of speaking to others in a condescending manner. A person may think that because they are more knowledgeable, more successful, or more pious, they are somehow superior. This attitude contradicts the teachings of Islam, which emphasize that true virtue lies in piety and good character, not worldly status. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was the most honorable of men, yet he treated everyone with kindness and respect, regardless of their background. Arrogance can also be detected in the way a person reacts to criticism. A humble individual listens, reflects, and seeks to improve, while an arrogant person dismisses feedback and insists they are always right. They may feel offended when corrected, assuming that their knowledge or experience makes them beyond reproach. This refusal to accept constructive criticism is a sign of a hardened heart, one that struggles to recognize its own flaws. Another warning sign is an excessive need for recognition and praise. A person driven by arrogance craves admiration, becomes upset when overlooked, and feels resentment when others receive attention. This desire for validation stems from pride, as it suggests an underlying belief that one's worth is tied to status and acknowledgement rather than sincerity and righteousness. True humility allows a person to work for the sake of Allah, seeking His approval rather than human praise. A practical way to test for arrogance is to examine one's thoughts and reactions in daily interactions. How do you feel when corrected? How do you treat those who cannot benefit you? Do you ever dismiss people because of their background or status? Reflecting on these questions can reveal hidden arrogance and help in the journey toward humility and self-purification. The Quran and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, provide profound guidance on avoiding arrogance and cultivating humility. Allah repeatedly warns against arrogance, reminding believers that pride leads to destruction. One of the most direct warnings is found in Surah Al-Isra, where Allah commands, "And do not walk upon the earth exultantly. Indeed, you will never tear the earth apart, and you will never reach the mountains in height." 1737. This verse reminds people of their true position in creation. No matter how powerful or wealthy a person may be, they remain weak and entirely dependent on Allah. Another important lesson from the Quran is found in Surah Luqman, where Luqman advises his son, "And do not turn your cheek in arrogance toward people, nor walk in pride upon the earth. Indeed, Allah does not like the arrogant and boastful." 31:18. This verse highlights that arrogance is not just an internal problem, but one that reflects in speech, body language, and behavior toward others. Speaking down to people, refusing to acknowledge their worth, or displaying pride in one's posture and expressions are all subtle manifestations of arrogance that believers must guard against. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was the perfect example of humility, despite being the greatest of creation. He did not allow his status as the final messenger to make him feel superior to others. He sat with the poor, ate with his companions on the ground, and personally assisted in household chores. Even when addressed with harsh words, he responded with patience and wisdom. One of the most powerful hadiths regarding arrogance is his statement, "No one who has an atom's weight of arrogance in his heart will enter paradise." When a man asked if this meant dressing well and looking presentable was considered arrogance, the Prophet clarified that arrogance is not about appearance, but about rejecting the truth and looking down on people. One of the key ways to avoid arrogance is to constantly seek Allah's help in remaining humble. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, frequently made dua asking for a pure heart and protection from arrogance. He would remind his companions that all strength and knowledge come from Allah alone, and that without His guidance, even the most righteous could go astray. Making sincere supplication, asking for humility, and seeking forgiveness for moments of pride are essential in preventing arrogance from taking root in the heart. Another lesson from the Prophet's life is the importance of how one speaks to others. He instructed his followers to always choose the best words, saying, "The best among you are those who have the best manners." Speaking kindly, avoiding harshness, and treating people with respect, regardless of their status, is a sign of true humility. Even when correcting others, Islam teaches that wisdom and gentleness should be used. When arrogance appears in the form of stubbornness or rudeness, it leads to resentment, while humility invites people toward goodness. The Quran and Sunnah emphasize that true greatness does not come from status, wealth, or intelligence, but from a heart that submits sincerely to Allah. The more a person humbles themselves before Him, the more they are elevated in His sight. Recognizing that all success comes from Allah and reminding oneself of human limitations is the key to maintaining humility and avoiding arrogance. Cultivating humility is a conscious effort that requires self-awareness, sincere intention, and daily practice. One of the most effective ways to develop humility is through prayer and remembrance of Allah. A person who prays regularly and engages in dhikr understands their dependence on Allah, recognizing that all blessings and abilities come from Him alone. The more one acknowledges Allah's greatness, the easier it becomes to let go of personal pride and arrogance. Regular supplication for humility is also essential. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, often made dua asking for a pure heart, protection from arrogance, and guidance toward righteousness. This practice helps instill a mindset of humility, as it constantly reminds a person that true success and honor come only from Allah. Serving others is another powerful way to break the ego and cultivate humility. Engaging in acts of kindness, whether helping a neighbor, feeding the poor, or supporting a struggling friend, shifts focus away from self-importance and fosters compassion. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was known for his willingness to serve, whether by assisting with household chores or attending to the needs of the less fortunate. He demonstrated that true honor lies not in being served, but in serving others. By actively seeking opportunities to help, a person softens their heart and prevents arrogance from taking root. Another step toward humility is learning to accept criticism with grace. An arrogant person resents correction and refuses to acknowledge their mistakes, while a humble person welcomes constructive feedback and uses it to improve. The ability to listen without defensiveness and reflect on one's shortcomings is a sign of wisdom and sincerity. The companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, were known for their willingness to accept guidance and correct their mistakes, even when it was difficult. Developing this habit allows a person to grow and refine their character. Gratitude plays a major role in humility. A person who constantly reflects on their blessings, whether in wealth, health, or knowledge, realizes that everything they have is a gift from Allah. Instead of feeling superior, they become more appreciative and use their blessings to benefit others. Gratitude eliminates entitlement and instills a sense of responsibility, reminding a person that privilege should not lead to pride, but to generosity. Practicing humility in speech and interactions is also essential. The way a person speaks to others, whether with kindness or condescension, reflects their level of humility. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, instructed his followers to choose the best words and speak with gentleness, even when addressing those who were hostile. Avoiding harsh language, treating people with respect, and genuinely listening to others creates an atmosphere of humility and kindness. Avoiding the need for constant recognition is another crucial aspect of humility. A person who constantly seeks praise or feels envious when others receive attention struggles with arrogance. True humility means being content with one's efforts, whether acknowledged or not. Seeking Allah's approval rather than people's admiration brings a sense of peace and prevents the ego from growing. By focusing on sincerity and self-improvement, a person strengthens their connection with Allah and nurtures a humble heart. Encountering arrogance in others can be challenging, but Islam teaches that the best response is patience, wisdom, and kindness. When faced with someone who displays arrogance, the natural reaction might be to argue or respond with similar pride, but this only fuels further division. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, demonstrated through his actions that responding to arrogance with humility disarms hostility and preserves dignity. Instead of engaging in confrontations, he remained calm, choosing his words carefully and addressing people with wisdom. One of the most effective ways to respond to arrogance is by maintaining composure and avoiding unnecessary conflict. If someone speaks in a condescending manner or belittles others, responding with patience and restraint prevents the situation from escalating. The Quran advises believers to speak with kindness, even when dealing with difficult individuals, as harshness only leads to more arrogance and resistance. When arrogance is met with humility, it often forces the other person to reflect on their behavior. Correcting arrogance in others should be done gently and with sincerity. If the person is open to advice, reminding them of Islamic teachings on humility can help. The Prophet, peace be upon him, corrected his companions with kindness, never humiliating them, but guiding them towards self-improvement. Instead of pointing out flaws in a way that provokes defensiveness, using soft and encouraging words can be more effective. If arrogance persists, it is sometimes best to disengage and leave the matter to Allah. Some people are unwilling to change, and forcing a response may only strengthen their pride. Making dua for them and leading by example is often the best approach. A person who remains humble in the face of arrogance ultimately earns more respect and reward from Allah. Arrogance is a destructive trait that distances a person from Allah, blinds them to the truth, and creates division among people. It was the downfall of Iblis, the ruin of Pharaoh, and the reason why so many reject guidance. Islam teaches that true honor does not come from status, wealth, or knowledge, but from humility and submission to Allah. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, despite being the greatest of creation, remained humble in his actions, speech, and treatment of others. Overcoming arrogance requires self-awareness, sincere supplication, and a commitment to serving others with kindness. Recognizing the dangers of pride and actively striving for humility brings a person closer to Allah and strengthens their relationships with those around them. In the end, true greatness is found not in elevating oneself over others, but in lowering oneself before Allah. Those who cultivate humility will find themselves raised in His sight. Thank you for watching Islamic Insights. If you found this video beneficial, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content that deepens your understanding of Islam. May Allah guide us all to humility and righteousness. Until next time, stay blessed and keep seeking knowledge.